You know, sometimes it's nice to get the answers, so I've got 5 cases from BuzzFeed Unsolved that are now solved. Starting with the bizarre case of Elisa Lam, who was found dead in the water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in 2013. Elisa left her home in British Columbia and took a trip to California in January 2013. She posted photos to social media and was seemingly in good spirits. She then checked into the Cecil Hotel near downtown Skid Row. She was initially given a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor. However, her roommates complained about certain odd behavior, so Elisa was moved to a room of her own after 2 days. Apparently, Elisa was leaving notes for her roommates that said "go home and go away." She would also lock the door to the room and require a password for entry. During her stay at the Cecil Hotel, she would also make her way to a live taping of Conan in Burbank, but she was escorted out for disruptive behavior. Elisa contacted her parents daily while traveling up until about January 31st, 2013, the day she was scheduled to check out of the Cecil Hotel and leave for Santa Cruz. But when her parents didn't hear from her that day, they called the LAPD. Police searched the hotel to the extent that they legally could. They searched Elisa's room and had dogs go through the building, including the rooftop. The dogs were detecting scents, but they just couldn't find Elisa. Then about 2 weeks later, on February 13th, the LAPD released a video of the last known sighting of Elisa, taken in one of the Cecil's elevators. You've probably seen this video before, but in the 2.5 minutes that Elisa is seen in the elevator, she makes several weird gestures and movements. She appears to press every button on the elevator panel. She looks down the hallway, then leaves the elevator at one point while its doors remain open. When the doors fail to close after she returns, she leaves the elevator again. Now, this caused the internet to come up with theories that collectively lowered the average IQ of the human race, like demons were chasing her or fucking ghosts, or she was playing the elevator game, which is some bullshit about an elevator taking you to a different dimension or something. But let's just come back to reality for a second. During the search for Lam, guests at the hotel began complaining about low water pressure. Some said their water was colored black and had an unusual taste. So on the morning of February 19th, a hotel maintenance worker went up to the roof, and that's when he found Elisa's body, floating face up in the water of one of the 4 1,000-gallon water tanks on the roof that provided water to the guest rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. It has since been determined that Elisa was struggling with her mental health at the time. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she was under-medicating at the time of her death. She had similar episodes before, where she went missing and even got hospitalized. As for how she got onto the locked roof, it has been proven that she could have used the fire escape. The tracking dogs even tracked her scent to a window connecting to it. And as for how she got into the tank, when the hotel worker found her, he said that the tank lid was open and not closed with the heavy lid like many people claim. It's a really sad case, but it's solved, and the conclusion is she went in herself during an episode, and unfortunately, no one was around to help her. Next up is the Lady of the Dunes. On July 26, 1974, a 12-year-old girl followed a barking dog to the decomposing body of an unidentified woman that was on a beach at the Race Point Dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. The crime scene was pretty graphic. Both of her hands had been severed, her teeth had been pulled out, and there was also a massive injury to her head, which crushed half of it. A blue bandana and a pair of Wrangler jeans were tucked underneath her head as she was laying on her back on a beach blanket. During the course of this mystery, her body was exhumed 4 different times in hopes to solve the case. And finally, on October 31st, 2022, the FBI announced that the victim had been identified as Ruth Marie Terry. There were quite a few suspects over the years, including a mobster named Whitey Bulger, who was known for removing his victims' teeth. There was also a serial killer operating in Massachusetts named Tony Costa, as well as a convicted murderer named Haddon Clark, who actually confessed to the murder, saying, quote, "I could have told the police what her name was, but after they beat the shit out of me, I wasn't gonna tell them shit." However, it was none of these losers. In fact, it was actually an even bigger one by the name of Guy Rockwell Muldavan. Now, I'm confident in saying that if Ruth's hands and teeth weren't removed, police would have solved this straight away. This guy was a person of interest to the police as early as 1950 already, and was suspected of killing a 28-year-old truck driver named Henry Lawrence Red Baird, as well as kidnapping his 17-year-old girlfriend, Barbara Jo Kelly. Baird's body was discovered face down on the beach near Table Bluff the morning following his disappearance. He was shot in the back of the head. He only had socks and shoes on, and nearby Barbara's clothes were found carefully folded and tucked underneath beds. No trace of Barbara herself could be found, and she has never been seen or heard from since. It is thought that whoever shot Baird had kidnapped her. Then on April 1st, 1960, Maldavin's second wife, Manzanita Ryan, as well as her daughter from a previous marriage named Dolores, both mysteriously disappeared while they were living in Seattle. Investigators found dismembered human body parts in Maldavin's septic tank, but were unable to prove that they were from either of the missing women. Maldavin then fled Seattle, but was arrested by the FBI and charged with unlawful flight to avoid giving testimony into their deaths. Interestingly, he was never charged for anything, since the King County prosecutor was reluctant to do so without a body. Now, after the Lady of the Dunes was identified, the police discovered that Ruth Marie Terry had actually been married to, you guessed it, Guy Rockwell Maldavin. The couple got married sometime in 1973 or 1974 and were busy traveling for their honeymoon after the wedding. But when Maldavin came back home without Ruth and he was driving her car, witnesses at the time said Maldavin indicated to them that Ruth had died. But when Ruth's brother tried to find out more, Maldavin apparently just told him that he had a fight with her during the honeymoon and he never heard from her again. Maldavin then moved to Chihuahua, California, to a small community near Salinas around 1976. He would then retire in 1985 from his job as an executive vice president of a silver store in Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, and die of a lengthy illness in Salinas, California on March 14, 2002. So despite all the awful things he did, he seems to have undeservedly lived a nice life. But then on August 28, 2023, Guy Rockwell Maldavin was officially named Ruth Marie Terry's killer. Next up is the Forrest Fenn treasure, which was a cache of gold and jewels that Forrest Fenn, an art dealer and author from Santa Fe, New Mexico, hid in the Rocky Mountains of the United States. The value of the chest was estimated to be as high as $2 million. He wrote a poem to act as a clue, which led tens of thousands of people to the Rocky Mountains in search of riches and adventure. Pretty awesome, until people started dying. Sadly, 5 people died while searching for the treasure. Randy Bilyeu was first and went missing in January 2016 and was found dead in July. His body was discovered by workers along the Rio Grande, and an autopsy could not determine his cause of death. His ex-wife publicly stated her belief that the Fenn treasure was a hoax. Jeff Murphy from Illinois was second and was found dead on June 9, 2017 in Yellowstone National Park after falling about 500 feet down a steep slope. Later that same year, the third victim, Pastor Paris Wallace of Grand Junction, Colorado, was found about 5 to 7 miles downstream along the Rio Grande after telling his family he was going to go out and find the treasure. The fourth victim was Eric Ashby, who moved to Colorado to search for the treasure full-time and was found dead in the Arkansas River on July 28, 2017. And the fifth and final victim, Michael Wayne Sexton, was found dead by rescuers on March 21, 2020, alongside his companion Stephen Inlow, who later recovered in hospital. The pair were discovered within 5 miles of a site that they had been rescued from a month earlier, near the Dinosaur National Monument along the Utah-Colorado border. So this led the chief of the New Mexico Police to publicly implore Fenn to end the treasure hunt, stating he's putting lives at risk. While one dude stepped up to put an end to the hunt once and for all by actually finding it. On June 6, 2020, Fenn posted on the searcher blog Thrill of the Chase that the treasure had finally been found, saying, quote, "It was under a canopy of stars in the lush forested vegetation of the Rocky Mountains and had not moved from that spot where I hid it more than 10 years ago. I do not know the person who found it, but the poem in my book led them to the precise spot. I congratulate the thousands of people who participated in the search and hope they will continue to be drawn by the promise of other discoveries. So the search is over." Now, the identity of the finder, the photograph of the goods, and the location of the treasure were not revealed at the time, but on July 22nd, Fenn stated on the Thrill of the Chase blog that the treasure's finder had authorized him to disclose the location in the interest of closure for its many searchers. The treasure had been hidden in Wyoming. However, in December 2020, Jack Stoof, a medical student from Michigan, and who actually used to be one of the writers of BuzzFeed Unsolved. So good for him. I mean, he was probably inspired by the episode they did on it to go out and find it. But he came out and revealed that he was the one who found it and went public with his identity by doing an interview. Due to safety reasons, he would have preferred to stay anonymous, but a lawsuit was expected to reveal his identity anyway. Now, I'm not entirely sure what lawsuit he's referring to, and full disclaimer, I could be wrong about this, but I think it might have something to do with a French treasure hunter Karen who filed a $10 million lawsuit against Fenn's estate in July 2021. According to Karen, he had determined that the treasure was hidden in southwestern Colorado. He then informed Fenn of his solution and began making preparations to retrieve it. However, COVID happened and he couldn't go out and search for it, and then Fenn announced soon afterwards that the treasure had been found in Wyoming. Karen claimed that Fenn took advantage of the delay to move the chest from Colorado to Wyoming, using the point that its exact final location had not been specified by Jack Stoof or any of Fenn's relatives. Unsurprisingly, this lawsuit was dismissed. Karen then tried to file another one and reopen it, but they said no.
Listen, fuck up, get out!
The collar bomb incident. On August 28, 2003, pizza delivery man Brian Douglas Wells entered a PNC bank in Erie, Pennsylvania. He then starts waiting in the queue to get to the teller. About 8 minutes later, a witness inside the bank calls 911, saying there's a guy in the bank wearing a bomb or something around his neck. When Wells finally gets to the counter, he slides a note over to the teller. The note says that the bomb will explode in 15 minutes unless $250,000 was handed over within that time. As the teller runs off to get the money, Wells waits at the counter, sucking on a lollipop. When the teller came back, she handed him a bag of money, which only had $8,702 in it because she was unable to access the vault that quickly. According to the witnesses, as Wells left the bank, he swung his cane gun and the bag of money around like Charlie Chaplin. Around 15 minutes later, after Wells left the bank, police saw him standing outside his car and quickly handcuffed him and left him sitting on the pavement in the parking lot. Wells said that 3 unnamed black people placed a collar bomb around his neck, provided him with the gun, and told him they would kill him unless he committed the robbery and completed several other tasks. This was seemingly confirmed when police found 9 pages of handwritten instructions addressed to bomb hostage, directing Wells to rob the bank. The instructions also included a scavenger hunt, listing a series of strictly timed tasks of collecting keys that would delay the detonation and eventually defuse the bomb. The pages also said that Wells would be under constant surveillance and any attempts to contact authorities would result in the bomb's detonation, saying, quote, "Act now, think later, or you will die." Now, the police didn't attempt to disarm the bomb at the time, but they instead focused on clearing the immediate area of pedestrians and ensuring that Wells could not detonate the device. The bomb squad would only be called at 3:04 p.m., about 10 minutes after Wells was cuffed, and then at 3:18 p.m., 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrived, the bomb detonated and blasted a fist-sized hole in Wells's chest. He would die almost instantly. The reason the bomb squad was held back was bad traffic. This is like a real-life version of Saw. Though the note claimed that Wells could gain extra time by each key found, police later traveled the note's route and couldn't complete it in the allotted time, implying that Wells would not have had enough time to get the bomb defused, so he was literally a dead man walking. Now, it's not clear if Wells was in on it, but if you're gonna suck on a fucking lollipop while you've got a bomb around your neck and swing a bag of money like Charlie Chaplin, then there's not much anyone can say to help your case. Well, the police tried to retrace his steps anyway, which would pretty much lead them nowhere, but almost a month later, a 911 call would come from William Rothstein saying, quote, "At 8645 Peach Street, in the garage, there is a frozen body. It's in the freezer." He was referring to his own address. Within hours of making the call, he was in custody. He told the cops that he had considered killing himself and had gone so far as to write a suicide note, which investigators found in a desk at his home. Writing in black marker, he apologized to those who cared about him and identified the body in the freezer as Jim Roden, and noted that he did not kill him nor participate in his death. However, the note opened with a very, very interesting disclaimer. This has nothing to do with the Wells case. Rothstein then explained to police that in mid-August, he'd received a phone call from an ex-girlfriend, Marjorie Deal Armstrong, who he had dated in the 60s and early 70s. Marjorie said that she had shot her live-in boyfriend, James Roden, in the back with a Remington 12-bore shotgun in a dispute over money, and now she needed help removing the body and cleaning up the scene. She would pay Rothstein $2,000 for his assistance. Marjorie was then arrested, and later in 2005, she told a state trooper that she had information about the Wells case, and after meeting with FBI agents, she said she would tell them everything if she was transferred from the Muncie Correctional Institution to a minimum security prison in Cambridge Springs. Then during a series of interviews, Marjorie admitted to providing the kitchen timers used for the bombs, and she stated that Rothstein masterminded the entire plot and that Wells had been directly involved in the plan. However, it turned out that Rothstein, Marjorie, and her fishing buddy Kenneth Barnes were discussing ways that they could make money. Marjorie suggested that Kenneth Barnes should kill her father, Harold Deal, so she would receive her inheritance. Barnes told her that he was only willing to do this for $250,000, and so the collar bomb bank robbery plot was born. According to Marjorie and the police reports, Wells is believed to be involved in the planning of the bank robbery the day before and was aware of the complex plot. He believed the bomb would have been fake, but would serve as exculpatory evidence if he were caught. According to an FBI affidavit, 2 witnesses came forward and confirmed that Wells had spoken about the robbery a month before it occurred. Wells was also seen leaving Rothstein's house the day before the incident, and investigators believe that he participated in a rehearsal. It was also believed that Wells was killed to reduce the number of witnesses. However, Jessica Hoopsick, a woman who was Wells's friend, confessed in the Netflix documentary Evil Genius that she set Wells up to participate in the crime by providing his name and delivery schedule to one of the conspirators in exchange for money and drugs. She claims that he had no knowledge of the robbery. Now, I don't know, I can't see why she would lie about that unless Netflix paid her to. I mean, Brian Wells is gone and he cannot come out and defend himself, so why would Hoopsie come out and admit that? Maybe because it's true, and Wells was what she described him as, a gopher. And our last one for today is the murder of Tupac Shakur. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac was shot in a drive-by shooting on the Vegas Strip. The driver, Marion Suge Knight, was only hit by bullet fragments, but Tupac was struck 4 times and died from his injuries 6 days later. A Crips gang member named Orlando Baby Lane Anderson became a prime suspect, but denied being involved and was never charged. Then Orlando himself would also be killed in an unrelated gang shootout in 1998. Then 6 months later, Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls, was also shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles. Biggie's case became just as bizarre as Tupac's, sparking all kinds of conspiracy theories, leading Voletta Wallace, Biggie's mother, to file a $400 million lawsuit against the LAPD, accusing rogue cops of killing her son. The lawsuit threatened to bankrupt the police department, with Voletta stating that it had nothing to do with dollars and cents. It had to do with honesty, integrity, and a cover-up. So after 4 years of courtroom battles, the LAPD decided that the best way to prove that the police hadn't killed Biggie was to figure out who actually did. So in the spring of 2006, Greg Kading, the detective that solved Tupac's case, got a call from an LAPD detective asking him to join a resurrected investigation into Biggie's death. Right, so that's how this started, and the information I'm presenting here comes directly from Greg Kading, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but I've linked the interview with him in the description. After about a year had passed and the task force exhausted almost all of their leads and had almost nothing to show for it, they agreed there was one more target left to pursue: Dwayne Kef D. Davis. If this name sounds familiar, that's because as far back as 1998, Davis has been saying that he was a front seat passenger in the car that killed Tupac. But whenever he was asked who pulled the trigger, Davis replied, quote, "Gonna keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the back seat, bro." Davis was a high-ranking gang member whose name was all over the case file, from chatting Biggie up backstage at the Peterson Museum on the night of his death, to his presence in Las Vegas on the night Tupac was killed. Now, Davis was living a damn good life in Southern California, raking in millions of dollars every year running a drug trafficking network that was directly supplied by the Colombian cartels. So getting him to talk to the police wouldn't be easy. So for that, they needed leverage. Greg Kading devised a plan to develop a strong enough drug case against Davis that he would be willing to divulge whatever he knew about Biggie's murder in exchange for a deal. Kading and his team started by buying kilos of coke from Davis through a Southside Crip informant who had done deals with Davis before. After a wiretap caught Davis saying to a drug trafficker in Texas that he also sold water, slang for PCP, they started buying that too. Now, getting caught selling a single-gallon jug was probably enough to put Davis away for the rest of his life, and according to Kading, Davis had said, quote, "Man, I can fill your swimming pool." In late 2008, Kading and another detective on the task force confronted Davis at his home in Southern California, and they explained to him the really bad situation he was in. Sitting in his garage so curious neighbors wouldn't be alarmed, they told him that he was looking at 20 plus years in prison on drug charges, and not to mention harsh sentences for numerous family members and friends who had been swept up in the sting. That is, unless he wanted to talk about Biggie and Tupac. Within the next hour, Davis's lawyer called and scheduled a meeting. Now, in an effort to extract the truth, Davis was offered a proffer agreement, meaning whatever Davis told them that day wouldn't be used against him, so he was able to speak freely, and in exchange, Davis could get potential leniency for the drug charges. Now, there was only one problem. Davis claimed that he didn't know anything about Biggie's murder, but for some reason, meetings kept getting scheduled, and Davis kept showing up for them. Then a few weeks later, in early 2009, Davis said, quote, "I don't know nothing about what you want to talk to me for, but what I do know is gonna blow your fucking mind." And here we go. Back in 1991, Davis met the famed East Coast drug dealer and club owner named Eric Von Zip Martin. Zip was a hustler who, according to Mike Tyson, once stole $600,000 of cash from a boxing promoter. I'm going to hell. Zip and Davis then formed a bond built mostly on cross-country drug deals, which eventually led to an introduction to another of Zip's associates, Bad Boy Records founder, Sean Diddy Combs. With Biggie's profile rising, Diddy and his star artists were spending an increasing amount of time on the West Coast, just as the rivalry between Bad Boy and Suge Knight's Death Row Records was heating up. At the 1995 Source Awards in New York, Suge Knight had openly mocked Diddy in front of a packed audience. A year later, Biggie and Tupac had come face to face in a standoff outside the Soul Train Awards in Los Angeles, during which Tupac implored Reggie Wright Jr., the head of Death Row Security, to quote, "Shoot him, Reg, shoot him." Davis then offered Diddy his Crip soldiers as security during his West Coast tours, but as is tradition with Diddy, he took the relationship one step further. During a stop on the 1995 Summer Jam tour in Anaheim, Diddy allegedly told a hotel room full of Crip gangsters, Davis included, that he wanted, quote, "them dudes' heads." As Davis put it, Diddy wanted them to kill Tupac and Suge Knight. Now, fair enough, he may have simply been caught up in the moment. Tensions were high and he was by all accounts legitimately concerned for his safety. But at the same time, it's Diddy. And he even offered $1 million to get the hit done. And Davis confessed that he agreed, saying, "We'll wipe their asses out quick." Detective Greg Kading then asked Davis to clarify, was Tupac's killing a murder for hire? But Davis replied, no. And now we finally found out why Tupac was murdered. Tupac was in Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand Hotel, an event that Davis and his nephew, Orlando Anderson, also attended. After the fight, Anderson was alone in the lobby of the casino next to the hotel when Trevin Lane, a blood gangster known for his connections to Suge Knight, recognized Anderson as the Crip who had tried to steal his diamond-studded Death Row necklace. Apparently, Diddy also offered a bounty to anyone who could bring him one of those chains. Lane pointed Anderson out to Tupac, and Tupac rushed across the floor and asked Anderson, "You from the South?" He then punched Anderson in the face, dropping him to the floor, where he then had the shit beaten out of him by the Death Row entourage, including Suge Knight. The security footage of that night shows Tupac and Knight attacking Anderson. Meanwhile, Davis was sitting in a nearby restaurant, and when word got back that his nephew had been attacked, he quickly planned his revenge on Tupac and Suge Knight. He wrote in his 2019 memoir, quote, "The shit became ominously personal." But because the visit to Vegas had been strictly social, Davis and his crew hadn't brought any guns with them, and this is where Zip comes back into the story. He also came to Vegas for the fight and offered a .40 caliber Glock to Davis that he had hidden in a secret compartment in his Mercedes-Benz. For the next hour and a half, two cars of Crips staked out Club 662, a Suge Knight-owned venue where Tupac was meant to perform, but Tupac and Knight never showed. After waiting a while, one of the cars headed out, leaving 4 people behind in a white Cadillac. The 4 people inside the Cadillac were Terrence Bubble Up Brown, the driver, Dwayne Kef D. Davis in the front passenger seat, DeAndre Big Dre Smith in the back seat, and Orlando Anderson. After waiting a while without Tupac and Knight showing up, they drove back towards the Vegas Strip, driving along East Flamingo Road. Just after 11 p.m., Davis spotted Tupac up on the street, near the intersection with Covell Lane, leaning out of the passenger side window of a black BMW that was being driven by Suge Knight. Tupac sat out of the window and started chatting up some girls in a passing car, then Bubble Up hit the gas, sliding the car into the far right lane, while Davis handed the Glock to Anderson in the back seat. As both cars slowed at the corner, Anderson reached across Big Dre and fired out of the open window, hitting Tupac 4 times, 2 in the chest, 1 in the arm, and 1 in the thigh. He would die 6 days later in hospital. Suge Knight, however, was only hit in the head by bullet fragments. Now, not only had Davis detailed the events behind Tupac's shooting and confessed to his own involvement in it, but he also laid out at least part of the blame for the murder on Sean Diddy Combs. Davis claimed that soon after the shooting, Diddy called Zip to ask, "Was that us?" Davis confirmed that it was, and despite the personal nature of the killing, he still wanted his $1 million bounty. Davis never got the $1 million though, and Diddy has repeatedly denied that this happened, calling Davis's claims nonsense. But no one really believes Diddy, because he's fucking Diddy. But at least we do finally know who shot Tupac and why. Then on September 29th, 2023, Dwayne Kef D. Davis was arrested in connection for Tupac Shakur's murder, being identified as the leader of the group and the mastermind of an intent to murder, and the 27-year-old mystery was finally solved. The murder of Biggie Smalls, however, still remains unsolved, but according to Greg Kading and his colleagues, the leading theory is that a woman named Tammy Hawkins was a potential conspirator in Biggie's murder. Tammy Hawkins is the mother of one of Suge Knight's children and had been involved in a number of criminal fronts on Knight's behalf. When she was faced with jail time and the threat of losing custody of her child, Hawkins claimed that in 1997, Suge Knight enlisted her to act as a go-between in arranging a hit on Biggie in retaliation for Tupac's murder. According to Hawkins, the shooter was a guy named Wardell Poochie Faust, a Bloods gang member who died in 2003 after being shot 10 times in the back while riding his motorbike in Compton. Poochie was apparently fucking crazy, and police once investigated him for unloading his gun on the car of a family driving past his house. But of course, due to lawsuits and sketchy police work, the task force got shut down, and without further corroboration, there will always be doubt if this is true. Well, it does feel good to finally get closure on some of these mysteries, and if you're up for it, I've got a 6th BuzzFeed mystery that's also now potentially solved. Check out the video I did on the Axeman of New Orleans, because I'm pretty sure I've solved it. As always, if there's anything you want to add to this video, leave your thoughts and comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you again soon with another unsolved mystery. Thanks for watching.